something about the Holocaust or about Jews, about Israel, TV stations are bombarded with complaints, advertising contracts are withdrawn, things happen, things move. When it comes to Muslims, when it comes to Islam, even though we are en masse a huge body politic, we don't seem to even move one little bit. Why is that? What is it about our psyche, do you think, that actually prevents us from doing anything?
I feel that the point to be noted here is that there are times when Muslims do respond, but many times it's not reported. For example, if you make an objection in the newspaper, it may be reported, may not be reported. That's one aspect of it. But I do agree that Muslims are a little bit, you would say, that lazy, or rather, they don't respond that well. But if you realize that there have been occasions, for example, what happened in Denmark more than a year back, there we found that Muslims, mashallah, throughout the world responded.
But do you think we respond in the correct way? Or do you think that our response in itself also draws additional ire? Do you think we respond, for example, in a rational way? Or do you think that, because from what I have seen, is that we always lend a very emotional response to what happens, and unfortunately what that does is, rather than alleviate what it is that we're seeking to respond to, it actually counteracts what it is that we're trying to do. And we're seen as very emotional beings, you know, we're seen as very sort of reactive beings, and nothing seems to be done in a very sort of strategic or rational manner. So we're seen as an irrational race.
What happened regarding the caricature that was given of the prophets in some of the magazines, I feel as a whole the Muslim responded well. But there were some who went overboard, who went to violence which totally against the Islamic philosophy. They burnt many things, they destroyed certain properties, which is totally not correct. So there were Muslims who did go overboard, which is wrong. But as a whole, I feel that the response that was done in terms of given in the media, or taking out a silent procession, a peaceful procession, that was good, mashallah. And there were people who had on various different levels. Maybe on the economic level, they banned certain goods. So as a whole, we found that it was a good response, according to me.
Okay.
Except for some of the Muslims who did go overboard, which is totally wrong. But as a whole, I feel that what happened during the caricature of the Prophet, I feel it was a good response.
Might I ask you a question? If Denmark had not been such a small fish in this whole thing, if it had been, for example, the United States, do you really think we would have been as vociferous, as effective?
Can be, why not?
I would like to add that
Please, go ahead.
Our reaction to these things sometimes are spontaneous. We need a long-term thinking of how to approach this problem instead of the temporary resentment, objection, things like that, enthusiasm that reaches the maximum in a short period, and then everything ends quickly. I think we should think of a long term, how to educate the West, or how to enter the educational system in the West and the media, to become friends with the media. I remember when the Muslim Association of North America held their first annual conference, there were 3,000 people who attended. The hotel that the conference was held at, the hotel manager called the police, and they tried to watch the people for 3 days. And at the end of the 3 days, he said, well, these people are humans or angels. There were no alcohol consumed, no sexual harassments, no people were going to spray 5 times a day. I think, and then that conference developed into a huge conference with at least 15,000 people attending. I think we should make use of these sources, and at the same time how to be more present in the universities and in these educational establishments, because what happens is that people in the media would also go to the academic world to learn about Islam, and when they don't find Muslims attending conferences, Muslim writing books, writing articles, they would take on
they have to take what they get. So it's our fault, is it not?
Yeah, and I think it's that we still have to do a lot, and to plan for the long term instead of the temporary, spontaneous.
We do this though all the time. It seems that we never learn. Everything is like an ad hoc response. It's knee-jerk, it's very reactive, and yet there doesn't seem to be any leading strategic think tank or any kind of body that will take responsibility for actually putting these plans into implementation and for actually guiding the. Do you disagree?
I totally agree with Dr. Mazen what he said, that we are more for spontaneous response.
That's
what
right.
Soda water bottle, it fizzles up and goes down.
Absolutely.
And what I realized that many a times when such an issue takes place, all the Muslims gather the resources and all of us are focused there, which I feel is wrong. We don't want all the resources to go in one direction. And what people do, there are many organizations when this thing took place, they left all the activity and only thing they were doing was they're responding to this. So what we realized that all our good other, there are many organizations doing many activities, they stop everything and they focus on replying, which is wrong. What we require some organizations which are specialized in this and they have the know-how of the media and they should respond and the other people should continue. And what I feel that it is more of their strategy that they keep on putting such things in the media. So we Muslims are more involved in handling this than doing the good work which we are supposed to do. So I disagree with the thing that all Muslims gather and respond to one thing and everyone leaves the activity.
Which doesn't help.
Yes, so we should be specialized, some groups should be specialized, only focusing on this.
How do we do it though? Why is it that it's not being done or it has not been done? And what is the major obstacle for this to be done? When everyone realizes that there's a problem and everyone realizes that there's a solution, why is there such a huge gap between bridging the two?
That the Muslims are very backward as far as media is concerned. We don't have a single media of our own. We do have a lot of media, maybe in Arabic, which only Muslims watch, maybe in Urdu, which Muslims watch. What we require is international media in the English language.
Absolutely.
Which we can convey our message to the non-Muslims. Whatever media we have or whatever many Muslim countries have, it's only watched by their people and by the Muslims. We have very few channels or magazines or newspaper which really cater to the non-Muslim. So most of the media that we have is focusing on the Muslims.
Right, and they don't need to be convinced, do they?
That's the reason when we started Peace TV, our channel is one of the unique channels in the full world. There are thousands of channels throughout the world. Our channel is the only channel which speaks about comparative religion. Islam and Christianity, Islam and Hinduism, Islam and Buddhism, Islam and Jainism, Islam and Judaism. So we give an overall view of the different religions, rather than only talking about one religion. And in this way, I feel that if we, whatever misconceptions that are there in the world today, if we reply on different levels, what I believe that whatever way that Muslims are being maligned or Islam is being maligned, we have to give the reply from their scriptures also, point number one.
Okay.
Then with reason, with logic, on the basis of science, with whatever data we have got. So if we give on various different levels, inshallah, even if we are not able to convert them, that's not the main thing, we can at least neutralize the animosity that they have.
This is a very important thing.
So what I believe that I've written a book, what I believe that whatever the common misconceptions are there, we should reply to these misconceptions with various levels and make it common, rather than answering 1,000 questions which are rare.
I think you're absolutely right.
We have to answer the questions which are more commonly
which are poignant and which are relevant, absolutely.
Right.
We're going to be back right after this break. Welcome back to this special Ramadan episode of Bridges. I'm Lubna Hussain, and I'm in the very distinguished company of Dr. Zakir Naik, who's the president of the Islamic Research Foundation in Mumbai, India, and Dr. Mazen Mutabbagani, who is associate professor of Orientalistics at King Saud University. We were just talking before the break about how important it is to influence the media, how important it is to have long-term strategy. A point that you were making, Dr. Mazen, during the break when we were having a chat was the fact that we also need to understand the psychology of the West. I think it's sometimes a game of hit and miss because we don't understand them. We don't really understand their psychology. We don't understand where they're coming from. And we're quite ignorant. In the same way that we keep blaming the West for being ignorant about us, in many respects, we are also rabidly ignorant about the West, are we not?
Yes, and I think this is very important. When we look at the scene of the academic world in the West, we find thousands of departments of research centers studying the Muslim world, and they know about us the details, the minute details of our lives, and we are almost ignorant of how they are living. And I remember a small, very short 10 minutes I had, and very precious 10 minutes I had with Sheikh Ahmed Deedat maybe 15 years ago in Medina. He came to visit with his wife and he refused to accept any speaking engagements, but I asked him to give me the honor of meeting him, and he said, you are in the Department of Orientalism or Western Scholarship of Islam, waiting for the Western scholars to make bad statements about misconceptions of Islam, and then you start defending them. How much do you know about the West? And he mentioned that in New York, how many gays, how many homosexuals, how many people in prison, how many, the number of divorces, the crimes, and there are other things. So I think the idea of that we have to establish departments, research centers to study the West, to know about the West. We need to learn from the West the positive institutionalization, institutions, the way things are done, the management. There are very positive things that we can learn from the West. I think from England, where I was for 4 months, the National Health Service and how they are giving, offering the health service to people who are just passing by England. So this is positive, but we also have to learn deeply, and as you said, we need to learn the psychic of the Western world, and to join them in their own problems. I mean, how can we empathize with them? How can we carry the message of Islam if we don't know the people who we are carrying the message to?
Because it's almost like we're speaking different languages. I mean, even though I suppose that's a figurative statement, but even in practicality, we are speaking different languages, but we need to communicate in the same language. And when you have an open path of communication, that's when misunderstandings, misconceptions are all reduced. Is that not the case? And yet we seem not to have capitalized. I mean, you've been doing a lot of work in propagation. How do you harness that, and how do you channel that, Dr. Naik? Because you're doing it in English. Your Peace TV is in English, right? Which is the correct language. It's the language of the majority of thinking, speaking intellectuals.
I feel that whenever the media attacks Islam, we should not be apologetic. Most of the time, the Muslims are apologetic and they go on the defense. I feel, and we find now on the media that Muslims are terrorists, they are fundamentalists, they're extremists, and we find that we go on the defense always. Rather, I feel we should turn the tables over. For example, when Muslims are called fundamentalists, I say that what is the meaning of the word fundamentalist?
Absolutely.
Fundamentalist by definition means a person who follows the fundamentals of a particular subject or particular field. For example, if a person wants to be a mathematician, he should know, follow, as well as practice the fundamentals of maths. Unless he is a fundamentalist in the field of maths, he can't be a good mathematician.
Absolutely.
For a person to be a good scientist, he should know, follow, and practice the fundamentals of science. Unless he is a fundamentalist in the field of science, he can't be a good scientist.
Absolutely.
We can't paint all fundamentals with the same brush, that all are good, all are bad. Depending in which field the person is a fundamentalist, you have to paint him accordingly.
But this is the way the media tries to tar us, and it always, and like we'd said before, it always manages, because of the way that we are emotional, we sometimes are not very rational, we jump to the occasion every time, do we not?
That's right.
There has not been a time I can remember, if I remember even as far back as when the Satanic Verses, for example, was released, it went shot straight to #1 in the bestseller list, because of the reactions, the imbalanced.
We made Salman Rushdie the billionaire overnight.
We made him absolutely a superstar.
Overnight.
He married a supermodel thanks to us.
That's
so
right.
this is the point: is that how can we better curtail our people, because the change has to start within, doesn't it? Within our community. How can we better do this?
Therefore, we should educate the people. For example, as I was saying, that fundamentalists can be good or bad, depending in which field the person is fundamentalist. If you're a fundamentalist doctor who's saving thousands of human life, then it's good for the society.
Absolutely.
On the other hand, if you're a fundamentalist robber who robs the people, then it's bad for the society. You can't paint all fundamentalists with the same brush, that all are good, all are bad. As far as I'm concerned, I say that I'm a fundamental Muslim, and I'm proud to be a fundamental Muslim, because I know, I follow, and I strive to practice the fundamentals of Islam. And I know that there is not a single fundamental of Islam which is against humanity as a whole.
Absolutely.
There may be a few fundamentals which a non-Muslim may feel that they are wrong or they may be against humanity, but the moment you give the logical background and the reasoning for it, there is not a single fundamental of Islam which can be pointed that is against humanity as a whole. Unfortunately, we go on the defense.
Always.
For example, the media says the Muslims are extremist. I said, yes, I'm an extremist. I'm extremely kind, I'm extremely loving, I'm extremely merciful, I'm extremely honest. And can anyone tell me that being extremely honest is wrong? Can anyone tell me being extremely loving is wrong? Being extremely merciful is wrong? So why do we have to go on the defense? Yes, being extremist in the wrong direction is totally wrong. But we have to be extremist in the right direction.
Absolutely.
A Muslim can't be a good Muslim unless he's extremely honest, extremely loving, extremely merciful. So unfortunately, we should not go on the defense. What we find that Muslims always go on the defense.
Do you think that's because of lack of knowledge?
Yes, one thing is lack of knowledge and lack of how to reply to the media.
Which we're not really
That's
in
right.
favor.
And the thing is that whenever anything is spoken about Islam, like for example, I remember that I had gone to US after 9/11, and I know that when I go into immigration, when I go to Los Angeles, I'm bound to be
Interrogated.
questioned and interrogated because of the way that, wearing a kufi, a cap and a beard. So I was prepared for that. Just to cut the story short, they asked me that, what type of Muslim are you?
What type of a Muslim?
I said, I'm Muslim. No, are you a Shia or Sunni? I said, I'm a Muslim. So he said, no, are you a Wahhabi? So I said that every Muslim should be Abdul Wahhab. Wahhab is one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Muslim cannot be a good Muslim until he's a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when they asked me why I come, I said I came for a conference. So but natural, I said that purpose so that I could do dawah. And when they opened my bag, they saw one of my DVDs on the topic jihad and terrorism. They asked me, do you believe in jihad? I said, yes. Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, believed in jihad. He said you have to strive and struggle. Do you believe in fighting? I said the Bible says to fight in Leviticus, in the book of Numbers, in the Gospel of Luke. Jesus Christ said that take a sword and fight. So what we have to do, and the moment I started speaking and quoting the Bible, all the customers were gathered together, about 9-10 of them, and they said, so can we ask you one more question? So can we ask you one more question? I just told my host that I'm doing dawah, so don't be worried that I'm late. So what we have to realize that we should know how to reply to them by quoting their sources, which they feel is authentic.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more.
Well, for the idea of knowing them, in June this year, a London magazine,
Time Out, which is a very famous, very famous.
Had a very nice reportage on. And the title is London's Future Islamic, and why London.
We're going to just hold the thought because we have a report just in from Washington DC that sheds light into the misconceptions that exist about Islam, the role of ordinary and influential people in the US in dispelling these misunderstandings on Islam. Let's watch the report with our correspondent in Washington, Aziz Fahmi, and we'll be back with the Time Out report just after this.
The main challenge for Muslims here is the lack of knowledge about Islam and Muslims. CARE is one of the organizations that spend a lot of time and efforts to educate the American public. but there is nothing more effective than the American Muslims mixing with their American peers and faces the challenge.
I think it depends on where you are in the country. I was born and raised in Michigan, and as you know, Detroit has a large Muslim population. So when I started wearing the headscarf in high school, it wasn't the first time that people had actually seen it. It was more of an interesting thing for my colleagues to ask me about, and why at that point did I start wearing it, whereas before, in the years before, I did not. So if I had any questions or looks, it was more out of curiosity and interest than I think concern or fear. However, when I moved across the country after graduating and getting married, and lived in parts of the South where there aren't many Muslims, I did get some awkward looks, some very extended stares, a few harassing names, but that's because I don't think they had seen it much and they didn't know what they didn't